welcome back, and it's time for the current affairs segment. We take a look at the politics of the weekend and that declaration by Murathe and being backed up by Francis Atwoli that Right Honorable Raila Odinga should be the president come 2022 and that they will be out there to back him in the event that he declares that indeed he's going to be on the ballot. Same, we take a look at what we expect tomorrow, that is on the Senate's task to ensure that they're able to deliberate on the way forward for counties in terms of sharing of the 316 million shillings. And, in this case, sharing this to them equally. Something that has been bringing a lot of uproar for the longest of time. So we get to see whether indeed there's going to be a truce on the impasse as of tomorrow. And we also take a look at the Western politics. I mean, every other weekend, the Western leaders have treated us to so much politics. We ask ourselves, is this time then that they are able to achieve the Mulembe unity, or this is just sheer politics? And what way forward amid the differences that we get to see moving on? And briefly, just take a look at also the InfoTrack report on how happy counties are or how sad respective counties are. And joining me this morning to expand more on the same is the Kanu Women Congress, that is Nairobi, Betty Adera, and also Soita Evans Kakasa, who's a lawyer. Edwin, we had him on the previous segment. And ladies and gentlemen, good morning.
Good morning.
You're well?
I'm fine.
All right, Karibu Sana this morning. I think it's just about the politics of the weekend. The biggest of them all is that declaration by David Murathe that if Raila is on the ballot, then they will be out there, or he will be out there to support Right Honorable Raila Odinga, that it is time that Right Honorable Raila Odinga equally is celebrated and appreciated for the numerous struggles that he's put towards attaining democracy in the country. Is that a polite way of telling us that Raila is going to be on the ballot? And since when did Murathe switch from speaking for the president and now speaking for Right Honorable Raila Odinga, if you'd want to look at it that way, Betty?
Thank you very much, Linda. Quite a weekend of action.
Just hold it right there. I'm not able to get you well. Maybe if they can give me more volume. I can't quite hear you, so it will be hard to engage.
Can you hear me now?
Just a moment, some more. All right, before they fix that, let's first let's have Edwin. Sorry, I don't know why Edwin keeps cropping up on my head now that I already had a session with him. Soita, we come to you. What do you make of that?
As you're aware, when after the handshake, the ruling party, which is the Jubilee Party, informally joined hands with ODM, and meaning that mechanism and even speaking to the public will be done by both parties, independently or in conjunction. Mm-hmm. So when you hear David Murathe speaking about Raila being on the ballot 2022, they're preempting the masses to start thinking in those lines. On one end, we really accept that Raila Odinga has been fundamental in this country. Very many rights that we enjoy, he has been at the forefront fighting for them.
Yeah.
About insisting that we should reward him for doing that. It's a matter of opinion. Let's hear what he will say himself. Mm-hmm. But what I believe is doing what is right and standing for fundamental rights and in accordance with the Constitution doesn't mean that you have to be rewarded. That is what those are the goals of a citizen.
Yeah.
We really appreciate what Raila Odinga has done, and let's see in the coming days how he will respond to that. Mm-hmm. But we know that from the movement that he has been making and the connections that he has been building around himself, it seems that there is a big announcement that is going to come from that end. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Are we getting mixed signals in regards to the same, even as you respond, Betty? Because when you see the likes of Murathe speaking of, a powerful presidency for that matter, is that a polite way of telling us again there are likelihoods that the talks of BBI are going to be shelved for now, or we are going to go for a referendum? And if we go to a referendum or for a referendum, is the presidency that is within that agreement what Right Honorable Raila Odinga would want?
Yes, thank you. Well, when you have a speech, and then his words are augmented by Atwoli, the Secretary General for COTU, then those are not words that we want to take lightly. But following on the interview that His Right Honorable Prime Minister Raila himself, said on live TV over the weekend, we are hopeful that the BBI conversation is still on, that the building bridges process is still on. Him and His Excellency the President, as the co-principals for the BBI following the handshake, are actually waiting to receive formally, the BBI report anytime soon. And once they do that, then they're going to come back to us as Kenyans and of course present that report to us as well. And then we figure out as a community, how to move forward from there. But now back to Murathe's sentiments, followed by Atwoli. I think they're just setting the stage for people to realize that, hey, while the deputy president has already, said that he wants to run, Raila himself, with his own mouth, we haven't heard him say, that he's going to run. But this is more like preemptive. This is preparing us, for a possible Raila Amolo Odinga presidency, whether it's going to be 1 term, 2 term, whatever time, that's something that we're being prepared for. But it also doesn't mean that any other Kenyan who wants to run, for the president should not do that. Everyone who wants to, has a right to do that. But I think they're just setting the stage for any other contestant to know that, look, if you want to run for this seat, the person to beat then, would be Raila Amolo Odinga. And let's give credit really where it is due. Raila, the Prime Minister, has done a lot, for this country. We owe a lot to him, as a person. We owe a lot to him, in his leadership. He's considered, the father of devolution. He's been very vocal on the front line on the fight against corruption, which has, been a cancer that has plagued us as a people, forever. And then now look at the handshake, and the BBI that will perhaps, give us a new political dispensation towards, a better governance and towards, a better leadership for the country now and going.
Betty, Soita feels like, it is an unfortunate to take such an angle and assume that just because he was there to fight for, liberation of the country and so much, that it is time to award him. We've seen the likes of, the late president, that is Mandela of South Africa. May his soul rest in peace. Having done so much for the country. But for years, again, they decided to be out of the race just because, he did whatever it is that he felt was right for the country and really did not expect much in terms of, the country coming back again to say thank you. So if we have to take this direction, don't you suppose that there are very many people who've done so much for the country, hence they would come out there, now trying to extend their hand, or asking something from us in the name of, or we have done so much, so it's time that you repay us?
I would want to believe that it is right to give credit where it is due. And this is one of those instances when we're saying that, hey, of course, not disagreeing with the fact that there's so many, people in Kenya, individuals in Kenya who are alive or who have passed on, who have done, tremendous things for this country. But Raila Amolo Odinga is one such person who is alive and living, in the present day Kenya. And if we just want to say that if he could do all this, without occupying that seat, just how much more, would he do? When he actually occupies this particular seat. Now, the context of Kenya and South Africa, in my view, are a little bit different. Kenya got its independence, many decades ahead of South Africa. And while Nelson Mandela is also celebrated not only in South Africa, but in the whole world, as again the father and grandfather and grandmother, of liberation and of independence and of fighting colonialism, there's only a lot, that we can learn from that context. We can learn from Nelson Mandela. But I want to believe that there's a lot of, similarities that we can draw from both gentlemen. While Raila was not on the forefront, fighting for independence for this country like Nelson Mandela did, but he took us through a second liberation. He took us through a second, sense of independence when he fought on the front line for Kenyans, to get a new and revised constitution in 2010 that has expanded, the democratic spaces in Kenya. That has made Kenyans, feel free to be more vocal, to share their thoughts, to talk about how they feel, how they like or do not like, leadership at all those levels. And of course, the human rights, on the human rights front, there's a lot that we are now protected, within the Constitution 2010, as was spearheaded by Raila Amolo. Of course, not alone with the team, but who was the face of devolution in Kenya? It is Baba, and let's give credit where it's due.
All right, sorry to bring in you again, and just seeking your reactions into this statement. Somebody writes here and says, the old men fronting Raila Odinga know that he has no capacity to beat Deputy President William Ruto. We all know that Ruto has done his homework well and now enjoys over 10 million votes and across the country. So Ruto can only be beaten through vote rigging, and that is the only option left for the Murathes and Atuolis of this nation. This also is an utterance that has been backed. This was actually written by Senator Kipchumba Murkomen at some point in time, and also, backed by numerous people. What do you make of that statement?
First of all, I really want to appreciate what Betty is saying and the comparison that she has offered about Kenya and South Africa.
Yeah.
That is order. And just to speak, I have a lot of respect for Raila Odinga. And he has, as I said earlier, has been very phenomenal in shaping the country the way it is right now. And we cannot take that away from him. And we cannot take away that the benefit that the Kenya populace has received from that. But we have to know that we live in a democratic state. We live in a democratic state, and as he has clearly said, those declarations by Murathe and Atuoli should not bar anybody from or anybody else from seeking the same seat. Now, if I can go in connection with that tweet, we have to understand that we are not, as a country, we are not in the business of rewarding people because of what they've done to us. We're not doing that. If we follow that clearly, there are many people who are supposed to get that. I'm not putting any credibility on the person of the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, but I'm saying there is even a commission. There is a presidential award that can deal with that. But to deal with the likes of Murkomen, the way he has said on his tweet previously, and the individual you said I have not gotten his name. People feel that as much as we got our independence, we were led by very strong men and women who led the second wave of democracy that we are experiencing and enjoying. Don't you think it's time that we have youthful people, not per se youthful, but another crop of leadership? Remember, it's very wrong to always recycle leaders. They have offered enough. Why can't they give us advisory opinions while other people take the lead? So that's my take about it.
And let me come in. Looking at these strong utterances from other leaders, does it then come in to confirm or to give us a confirmation that it's not always about the votes of the people, but technically about the system, about the deep state that is so certain that if they decide that this is time to award Raila, then that's the direction. That, some of them coming out to say that it's because they know that there's another person who has more numbers, and in the event that this person loses, it will be clearly out of rigging. Is that a polite way of telling us that the vote process is as good as useless, Betty?
Actually, I've read and heard, time and again, the narrative that says that we as Kenyans, we really know how to vote. What we don't know how to do is to count the votes. And I think that speaks to what, you are just saying, this perception out there that, for instance, Raila has been winning, but his votes, keep gets stolen.
Yeah.
Not because people did not vote right, but it's because at the counting process and tallying process into a final really tally, then there's a problem. And I think that is perhaps what led us to one of the darkest moments, in our times and history in Kenya, the 2007, 2008, elections, and then the violence, that followed by. But having said that, I want to believe that we are now in a new political dispensation. Our current constitution is almost heading to 10 years, and this is the time, to look at it and figure out ways in which we can strengthen it. We are all aware as a people that even when it was being promulgated in 2010, it did not mean that everything, in it was agreed upon by everybody. There were some contentious issues in there, and IEBC, is still one of them. But I believe we have 2 years, to go to the next general election, which is 2022, and this is time, now, like all the leaders, the young and the old, the old and the fresh, to come in and look at ways in which we can actually strengthen IEBC, and I'm hopeful that perhaps, within the BBI, provisions, are made for that, so that this institution that is charged with the responsibility of delivering a credible, election that all Kenyans will believe in, finally happens once and for all, so that when you lose, you lose. When you win, you win.
All right, well, that's an interesting one. And then we'd want to talk about the role of President Uhuru Kenyatta in this, and the role of the handshake as it stands right now, and the likelihoods of ensuring that they get to push Right Honorable Raila Odinga for the win. Is that a polite way again of telling us that from the word go, the handshake was squarely not about the aspect of peace, but squarely about, fronting one individual for this? And I'd come to you later on, Betty, to find out. I mean, when you see the likes of Atwoli, who is a diehard of KANU, celebrating and affronting this, or saying that this is actually the direction that they should take, what does it speak to his leader that is in the KANU party? But that aside, first of all, Soita, was the handshake a way of crafting or, creating a path for Right Honorable Raila Odinga officially to get into the presidency?
That's one way of looking at it, especially the opponents of that faction might say that, the handshake is a sham. It is just to entrench dynasties. You remember that talk about dynasties at some point. Then, on the other hand, you remember the situations that led to the handshake. This country was in a very bad place, and we cannot lie that we've not received many gains from the handshake. That is one. And you remember even when, let me talk about electoral laws a little bit. You remember the reducible minimum.
Yeah.
Then it came to be reflected into the BBI. What the BBI tries to achieve is that, first of all, we have to sort out our electoral issue. We have to sort out we have to discard and drastically reduce instances whereby when somebody wins or when somebody loses, they say that I was rigged out. Now, I don't believe per se that the handshake was just to put a stamp on the Raila presidency, but it was first of all to resolve several other issues. And again, to be very clear, Raila has not declared his interest. He has not declared.
Are you sure Raila has not declared? Most of the times when we see the likes of Orengo speaking, we say that Baba has spoken, based on how much they work together and in tandem. And numerous times we've heard Murathe speak, and people have argued that maybe that is just Murathe, but then eventually it happens, and it's clear and evident that maybe he was speaking on behalf of, his leader, that is President Uhuru Kenyatta. So when we say that Baba has not declared it, are we certain that indeed Baba has not declared it?
Baba has not declared it.
No.
But you see, you can look, as I previously said, you can see from the movements that he's been making. There's you can conclude, you can try to conclude, but circumstantially, and say that yes, he has shown interest in the top seat. But that does not mean that the handshake was meant or was put in place so that they can declare him the running mate.
Yeah. And
as Betty said clearly earlier, we are being preempted. We are being preempted so that we can see, so that the two factions, whereby on one side sits ODM, the other side sits Jubilee, so that they can see the outcome and how the people will respond. It's just a matter of strategy. Then we will go to the next phase, as the former Prime Minister himself clearly said, that we are going to the next stage, and which will be execution. We are going to see how people will react on issues of the BBI.
Yeah.
If the BBI goes through, at that moment, we will clearly know that the proponents of the handshake will have a higher hand on choosing who will run for the next, will run the 2022 election.
All right.
And even from the sentiments of Murathe, you saw he said that it's like cleaning the house. They're saying we want to give Baba an opportunity, so that after that, he in fact mentioned a transitional president. After that, now that the new political will have a new political dispensation differently. Yeah.
Okay. All right. There's a view here from Shunza Gitali, who's watching, and he says Murathe was simply enticing Raila and his followers to support the controversial Uhuru method of disbursing revenue, a real political lie. Betty.
Well, in politics, you cannot rule out anything.
Yeah.
But having said that, you can also not take for granted anything, you know. So we have had Atwoli speak, we have had Murathe speak, but we haven't had Baba himself speak. We haven't had the head of state, speak. And remember, again, a narrative that in politics, one day, is a long time. We are almost 2 years, away from the general election in 2022. And I want to believe that a lot, could potentially change between now and that time, especially after, we received this much awaited BBI report. And remember, leadership of a country is not just head of state. It's not just president. There's a lot of leadership space there. There's a lot of leadership opportunities that would house every other faction or individual that is friendly, to the person who actually eventually clinches the seat. And remember, one of the things that are being proposed in the draft BBI report, as we had it, as we read it, as we talked about it, would be the presidency. But then there was also, the position of creating, a position of a prime minister, with deputies. President, of course, has deputies. So again, it's a wait and see to see how all that will shape. But for me, what I would just say that while right now we have a stalemate, at the Senate, and the counties are actually crunching, with brokenness and no money, to run services, for me that would be priority for all leaders to put their effort, to ensure that the senators are talked to. The senators are made to see the wisdom in taking the best decision, for Kenya, so that at least we remove that out of the way. Because remember, we've also had narratives within the revenue allocation conversation that says that if you don't pass this, then we're going to hold on to the BBI. We're not going to support it, and that is a dangerous place, a dangerous place to be. So I want to believe that from the head of state all the way, down to Kenyans, every eye, is on the Senate tomorrow, just to see whether are they going to crack this, or are they going to do again another 8th or 9th, postponement of this conversation. But back to the Murathe Atwoli sentiments. Remember, these are also individuals. These are also Kenyans with full rights, to hold an opinion. They have full rights to endorse whoever, they want to endorse. But it's a matter of, let's wait and see what really happens, how the next few days unfold.
All right. Speaking of which, let's loop in Soita. Should be the 8th moment when, of course, we'll get a different view on the same, when the Senate sits down to deliberate on these issues to do with county revenue sharing. But before we even get to that, the fact that, there's been these utterances, I know at some point in time, this has, been reported to have left Jubilee members, some of the Jubilee members, at a split. And same applies to, people of ODM who sort of feel like, now their leader is officially making moves that are a little bit confusing for them, in the sense that he is meeting figures who are differently, aligned to matters ODM. And I think we've seen what has been trending. That clip where, of course, there is Peter Kenneth, there's Murathe himself, there is Atwoli himself, there's different figures. So why the confusion? Why do the members sort of feel like, there's some bit of, stuff that they do not really quite get clear? And what does it move by Murathe speak, of course, to the Jubilee members?
As you're aware, in politics, you have to make moves and change strategies each and every time. I like to again make reference to Betty. He says that with the current sentiment and people having their opinions and forming a national narrative, it became clear to Raila Odinga. I believe after the mock inauguration at Uhuru, at the grounds, he changed tactics completely. He said, and that's why you can see the likes of Murathe saying there will be a Mandela moment. Mandela at some point reached out to his foes. And when he was reaching out to his foes, his biggest supporters were against him. You can see what happened with NASA.
Yeah.
Now, back to the ODM house. Raila knows, and it is well known that he can whip his house into order. Even if you remember the time when he was away in hospital, they were saying that let's wait for Baba. He will come and give us the 1 or 2 matters. So it's a matter of change of strategy and also reaching out to other like-minded people currently because of the current situation. Now, when you see him meeting the likes of Peter Kenneth, he wants to also interact with that side of the voting bloc and bring a consolidation, so that when that decision and the awaited pronunciation that he will make, he will have support from each and every side of the country.
All right, and coming back to KANU, which is also what played out during the weekend. First, a question that I had intended to ask you, now that you are a member of KANU, when you see the likes of diehards Atwoli, the KANU party, shifting focus or looking at this different direction at a time when your own party leader has declared his interest for, presidency come 2022, what does it speak of the members within the KANU party? And also this ditching or these utterances by Joshua Kutuni over the weekend, that if this side does not benefit me, then I'm afraid politics is a game of interest. I will cross over to the other side.
Like I said earlier, and I think this is something that we as now regular Kenyans need to really look at what our leaders are doing and probably, just follow, their example. I mean, it just shows that at the end of the day, one leader, there's the realization that not one person can ever make it. Not one community, can ever clinch the presidency. Not one political party, can ever, clinch the presidency. There's need, therefore, for coalitions of interest. There's need, therefore, for leaders to reach out to each other. And behind the scenes, you and I know that all these leaders at the end of the day have coffee and play golf together. While we as regular Kenyans take a very hard stand.
We lost Betty on that one. I think it's important that I call upon you to be part of this conversation like I had promised. That, of course, I'll update you on how best you can interact with us as we try and fix that. 0768 095 491, the numbers to call in the event that you want to be part of this discussion. 22047 is the SMS shortcode. Drop your SMS or your message, and I'll be here to go through it as we proceed with the conversation. Hashtag Morning Cafe at Linda_Lela at TV47KA, or you can as well stream live on Facebook, TV47, on our YouTube channel or our YouTube handle, that is TV47. Also, as we get to hear your sentiments on the politics of the weekend, so much played out. As we try and fix the audio aspect of it, we're talking about the presidency or the likely presidency of Right Honorable Raila Odinga as declared by the likes of Jubilee Point man, that is David Murathe, and also Atwoli coming out to back his utterances. And as they would always say, when these leaders speak, then you need to listen, or you need to, stop whatever it is that you're doing. Try and listen to what it is that they're saying. His declaration over the weekend is that Right Honorable Raila Odinga should be awarded that aspect of, congratulations, or better yet, message of thanks, or action of thanks, to the numerous ways that, of course, he went ahead to fight for the country's liberation, to fight for the country's democracy, to fight for change in the country. So, according to him, it is time then that we tell him thank you for the efforts that he's put towards this. He's looking at a scenario where we're talking about the coming in of multipartyism, which was hugely spearheaded by him, and the changes that we're witnessing right now as to matters BBI, and also the 2010 constitution conversation that was ongoing. So it's important that we take a short breather. Just a reminder that you'll be part of this discussion, as I have said. 0768095491, the numbers to call. 22047, the SMS short code at Linda_Lela TV47. After this break, we are right back with the guests of the day to wind up on the segment.